Okay, everybody. In spite of the waking nightmare that was Kado the right answer, I've had at least in the time since finishing that, I finished the show that me and May were watching that turned out to be good. So I've confirmed that there is more than one good anime this year, and I've got hopes that maybe we'll find another one. Perhaps in this giant list of shows that I have to watch by myself. Not all of these are bad. Look, Rakugo 2's in there. That's probably alright. 34. That's right up the top. Oh, that's the new TQ Season 9. I'll probably watch all of that in one go. Okay, so I actually held off on watching Take You until a couple days later, hence why I'm already shaven now. But it was a good season of Take You. It was probably the funniest one I've seen yet, and I don't know if that's because it was more consistently funny or because I decided to watch it while I was high. I just figured that would be a good state of mind for Take You, where I could process things more, and I was completely right. So, yeah, it was good. I gave it a 7, and I usually give it a 6. I don't remember any of it, but, you know. Random.org. Help me find more. 17. That is Grand Blue Fantasy. Haven't heard anything about this show. Let's see what it's about. So about 8 minutes in, this show just seems like the epitome of video game adaptation du jour. Like, it's just a fantasy story. A show like this comes out at least once every 6 months, where they just adapt a video game into an RPG into a generic RPG anime. They all feel exactly the same to me. I don't know if there's people who are like particularly a fan of this genre, but I am certainly not one of them. What I find most off-putting about this show is that in spite of the fact that it has some good animation, like, it opens up with a pretty decently animated action scene, the characters all have really rough outlines that I just think look terrible. Like, I don't know if they were trying to make it look more fantasy-esque by having this sort of, like, more hand-drawn look to them, but it doesn't work because, like, the show is clearly digitally colored. Like, it just makes it look unfinished. It's just really rough, and I don't know. I think it looks shitty, especially on like these really detailed character designs, to have such like rough lines, and it's persistent throughout the show. So like, yeah, I don't know. It looks funny to me, and the story is just pretty generic. The episode's pretty slow. I can't see any reason I'd end up watching the rest of this. Anime pussy, anime pussy, anime pussy, anime pussy. They be fine as a motherfucker. Classroom of L. Look, my handwriting's not always this bad. I was writing. See, I wrote these. Like, me and May were going through all the shows, and, like, I was asking her, how about this one? And then I'd write down the name. And I was trying to do it fast. We were in a hurry. So this is what it's like when it's in a hurry. Classroom of what? Elite? Is that the name of a show? I don't know what show this is. So I got about 10 minutes into Classroom of the Elite, and I've never heard of this show at all. I don't know the first thing about it. And going into it, I saw that on my anime list it had an almost 8.0 score and was like the 4th most popular show of the season. So I was like, what the hell is this? This seems to be popular and well-liked. But after watching some of it, I both feel like I understand why it's popular and why I have no interest in it. Because this is a show about something, about ideas, for sure, but packaged in the most generic, light novel, high school, moody protagonist way imaginable. It reminds me a lot of Oregairu right off the bat, but with even less personality. First of all, aesthetically, the show is hideous. Like, the uniforms look like shit, the backgrounds look like shit, the character designs look like shit. So that is already just Don't even think about the visuals at all. But the show, like, opens on a fucking Nietzsche quote about, like, the equality of people and, like, a long ramble, like, inner monologue about whether or not people are equal. And then there's, like, a whole scene of some douchebag on the bus, like, refusing to give a seat to an old lady because he's like, why should I have to? And so, like, basically it's extremely heavy-handed about, like, introducing what's going to be its message. Like, literally beating you over the head as hard as it possibly could, which I'm okay with, if it was funny. I was hoping it would be like, kind of like, what the hell was that Chinese cartoon from last year? The Classroom, Cheating Craft. Like, if it was like Cheating Craft, or even like Kill La Kill, where it's like just so over the top with being about this thing, I thought it could be entertaining. But then we just kind of start plotting through like a classroom self-introduction sequence, and all the characters are introducing themselves, and like, it's just kind of repeating the same shit about like these ideas that it has, and I was like, okay, I already don't care. You know, and like I skipped through the episode to see if it was going to get any more like ridiculous or fun, and it just seemed like a lot of plodding around, talking, inner monologues, very boring characters, like the most tired cliche characters possible. In fact, almost the same guy and two girls trio that Oregairu has, though I don't know if they're like the main characters in this, because the image for the show on Mal presents a more of a ensemble cast, but I have no idea. But like, this is a kind of show that, like, these ideas that it's exploring, I could get from a lot of places. You know, there's plenty of art that's going to explore these ideas in a more nuanced way, or in just a better, more interesting setting with better artwork. You know, like, I don't need to watch this show to explore themes about inequality in high school, like, and to have it beat me over the head so thoroughly, but then to not be an interesting show. It's like, I always do this, and I feel bad about doing it, because sometimes I get shit for it, like, saying that it's for a younger audience, but it definitely feels like this is geared towards teenagers, and as an adult, I kind of feel like maybe I already know what this show has to say and don't need a show like this to tell me anything, you know? It's just so ham-fisted about the presentation of its ideas, and I so immediately don't care. So, you know, I don't know if it's just that the show is popular among a younger crowd, or if people really, you know, bit on these messages. I mean, looking at the Mal reviews, were all over the place. Like, the top rated one has a 3, the next one has a 5, but then there's a 10 and a 7, and it's like, this is clearly going to mean something very differently depending on how much you can buy into it. How much do you care about the message it's sending, and how willing are you to look past the total basic-ass light novel anime trappings, you know? Obviously, I am quite unwilling. Next show. Oh, that's the number that was just up there. 34. Did we do 34? That is... Yes, we did 34. That was Take You. Have we done 21? That is also taken. We're getting to that point where writing this on paper was a bad idea. 34 again. Come on, random. I know you're truly random, but you could at least try to not give me the same number 3 times in a row. Number 14. That was Zero Kara. 19, that is Sin. It's just called Sin. So, the Sin show. This one, I pretty immediately figured out was a fan service action show, of which there's usually at least one of these a year, if not one every couple of seasons. I was immediately struck by the fact that there's actually some decent animation and some good character artwork, which is... You know, when you see something like that in a show like this, it starts making me question, like, who made this and, like, why? And, of course, it's the same director who did Queen's Blade, as well as one of the other fan service action shows. So I was like, okay, this is a Queen's Blade type show. You know, it's a bunch of big-breasted women fighting each other, but also with tons of sex and fan service pandering shit in it. And it's all themed around religious apocrypha. Pretty corny. It seemed like a decent enough show at being what it is. Honestly, the funny thing about this was that my favorite part of it was the fetish shit, which I'm sure a lot of people, that's exactly the reason that they would give this show the terribly low score it has on Mal, which is less than a 6, which is not, like, unfair, but, you know, most people are just turned off by the fan service. I actually thought the fan service scenes were fairly well done and entertaining, whereas the actual plot seemed really dumb, and I also loved the music because it's just got like symphonic metal music playing in the background, but like turned way down, which is really comical to me. But also kind of like it's you know it's an edgy badass show. Like it's obviously meant to be for like heavy metal dudes who want to see a bunch of hot chicks beat each other up. With a religious apocrypha as the sort of backdrop, but it's not that entertaining. I probably would feel the same way about this that I felt about Queen's Blade, which is that, it's not as bad as people make it out to be, but it's also not great. So there's not really much point in actually watching it unless it happens to appeal to you specifically, which it doesn't really to me. But I made it through the whole first episode. Just, I can't probably see myself continuing. Not even going to turn off my music. What do we got here? 33. That is something we already did. 31. That is Isekai Shokudo. Isn't that the cell phone one? Is that what I'm in for? I don't know. Okay, so Isekai Shokudo thankfully is not the cell phone show. It's the restaurant from another world. This one's a show about an older guy who's got a restaurant, and every weekend it's connected to a fantasy world, and so fantasy people eat at the restaurant. Based on having watched most of the first episode, it's pretty much an Iyashikei cooking show. It's pretty slow and meandering and not that interesting. I can't say I've got like a huge problem with it. I could easily see people enjoying this show. And I can tell that it'll probably have a little bit more like going on in the future because the early part of this is real fucking slow. It's one of those where the scenarios are like kind of funny but not funny. Like they're not jokes. I would almost compare it to like Polar Bear Cafe, which was also a show I could not stand at all. But if you liked that show, you might enjoy this one. It's just a bunch of fantasy people eating at a restaurant. I think one of my biggest problems with it is that the food porn's not very good. Like, there's a lot of anime that tend to do this thing where they draw food looking a little bit too glossy and plasticky, and it doesn't really look like edible food. And this show kind of has that problem. The second segment of the episode is about this dragon woman who comes in and she orders beef stew, and what he gives her is just 4 little chunks of beef, a potato, and some carrots in a thin layer of broth. And I was like, that's not a fucking stew. If I'm getting a beef stew, I want a bowl full of fucking gravy with a bunch of fucking beef and shit mixed into it. Not this fancy ass presentation bullshit. Didn't even look good, And then the whole scene is this dragon woman slowly eating this stew and being like, oh, it's delicious as this peaceful music plays. And I'm just like, you're not selling me on that with this. You can't give me the Iyashikei without at least the beautiful visuals, Not that I particularly like the genre anyways. But, yeah, this is just a little bit too fucking slow for me. I was every couple of scenes I just lose attention and end up thinking about something else. So, I'll move on to another show. Working on the railroad all the live long. We already did that. That was Kato. That was a fucking nightmare. 42. Did we do the last one yet? 42 is The Reflection. Oh man. I've uh I've heard a lot of shitting on this show, but I've also seen defense of it. I have seen people defending The Reflection, saying that after episode 1 it's okay, but the first episode's really bad. I don't know what to expect. I'm going to check it out. This is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. This feels like a low budget art house movie that somehow is 12 episodes long. I don't know what this is. So I tried to watch episode 1, and immediately it's apparent why everyone hates this show. Like, it's not just that the visuals are bad and wrong, which they are. It's that everything about it is wrong. It all feels really weird. And almost like Handshakers, you can tell that there is some ambition in there, some like interesting ideas about how to present like fighting and shit, but it's just so painful to watch that it's like it makes your skin crawl. It's like a gross feeling. And it's not just the visuals, like there's very little dialogue and it's very spaced out. There's lots of just like silence, like parts where it's just quiet for long stretches. Like the soundtrack's missing and the sound design's really bad. There's not enough sound design. Like there's occasional sound effects and stuff, but not as many as there should be. So the action scenes feel fucking weird. And like skipping through episode 1, it was like all action scenes. So then I started up episode 2 and like whatever the plot is, it's communicated in such a weird way where it's like it's trying to do show don't tell, but you can't tell what you're looking at, you know? It's fucking really awkward. And like skipping through even episode 2, I'm just like, what the fuck is this? And I can tell there's probably something really interesting about this show. Like, I'm willing to bet that if you could parse all of this, there might be something really interesting in there. But it's so hard to watch that there's no way I could put up with it enough to find out. Like, there's just no way I could watch this show. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how a show like this got greenlit and produced and nobody at any point went, this is unwatchable. By the way, I've heard this is like a Stan Lee thing. I'm only bringing that up because if I don't, all the comments are going to be telling me that. I know. I don't bring up every single detail about a show in my reviews, just what I've observed. I don't know what the Stan Lee thing, like, I don't know that has to do with why this is bad. I don't know what I don't know if that has anything to do with it. It's just, what the fuck am I looking at? Alright, let's see how long it takes us to get something we haven't already gotten before. Number 10, already got. Number 29, I can't tell. Looks like we don't have number 29. That is... Oh no, it's Owari Monogatari. I haven't even watched the other seasons of Owari Monogatari. Why did I even put this on the list? I knew I was not going to actually watch it because I have to catch up on like 5 seasons of Monogatari. I'll do that. That'll get its own video. I promise. I promise that Owari Mono will get its own video at some point. When I catch up on all the fucking Monogataris. Because the last one I saw was Hana Monogatari, so I'm like years behind. 40. Did I do that? I did 40. 22. That is Adam. That's some kind of Astro Boy related show, I think, which I am curious about. You know, this is one of those shows that I feel like had the potential to be something interesting, but just falls short of delivering on it. and that's only based on the first episode, but I went and looked at reviews to sort of see if maybe it does deliver on its premise, and the general consensus seemed to be no. This is a show about the early history of the guys who would later build Astro Boy, and it's sort of set in that universe, like right before the revolution in robotics that would have taken place before the beginning of Astro Boy. But basically, it's just about these two scientist buddies who make a cool robot that's like, you know, a hero robot, and it's just kind of about like the adventures of the hero robot saving the day. So, if anything, it almost feels like it doesn't have enough of its own, you know, its own story. It's just like, hey, what would these guys have been doing back in the day? I guess this, you know, like, I'm not terribly interested in, like, where the narrative of this show is going to go, other than in that it eventually becomes the story of Astro Boy. And it just moves a little bit too fucking slow. Like, the show has some nice colors, decent character designs, it's got cute girls in it, it's got some cool robots, some good animation in places, particularly the OP. But, like, I just can't see getting excited for it when it's, like, it's very plotting. Like, there's lots of shots that just go on for too long, and long scenes where nothing's really happening. I found myself getting sidetracked a lot. Let's put it that way. Like, my mind was wandering as I watched this episode, and I found it difficult to focus on because there's just so little going on in the episode. And, you know, what I read online seems to indicate that that continues to be the case. So, yeah, I could understand maybe a more patient viewer than myself with more investment in Astro Boy potentially enjoying the series, or just if you like robots in general, but, like, it's too damn slow for me, man. Okay, I think we can get away with doing just like one more show and then wrapping this episode up. What's 27? Aho Girl. I know this one's based on a 4-coma manga because I've seen it in Barnes & Noble. I don't know if the show is supposed to be any good. I guess I'll find out. I am, like, legitimately shocked by how quickly and completely I fucking hated this show. I made it through like 3 minutes of this. I was thinking, it's a 12-minute episode. Surely I can at least watch the whole first episode. But no, I really hate this show. Because the joke is that the girl is stupid. And so, in rapid fire, every joke is, the girl does or says something stupid, and then the guy says, "You're a stupid." And it's just that over and over again, rapid fire, for minutes. Girl says, like, "Ugh, I got zeros on all my tests." Guy says, "Well, you're an idiot." And she's like, "Oh, blah, 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 dumb shit. I like bananas." Guy's like, "Oh, she's such a fucking idiot." And it's just back and forth like that, forever. And none of it's funny at all. Like, none of the things that she's doing are funny. The joke is just that she is dumb. Not even that the things she's done are hilarious. They're just, she has done a dumb thing. And then the guy says, "You sure are dumb." Like, these aren't jokes. There's no jokes in this. And then, and it's just like, every generic comment possible. Like, she accuses him of going to a lesser school because she's there. She's like, "Oh, you wanted to come to this lesser school with me?" And he's like, "No, it's just because the good schools were too far away." And she's like, "Oh, then you're just a tsundere." And he's like, "Oh, this bitch." And I'm like, why? What? This is like the most basic shit I've ever seen in my life. Like, I mean, the show's called Idiot Girl. It feels like it's by idiot for idiot, you know? Like, this is the most by the numbers, dumbass comedy shit I've ever seen, I think. It's the most, like, rote comedy I've ever seen. And I really hated it. So, I think that's it for this episode of The Dark Side. Nothing but drops as usual. I mean, the one show I finished on the dark side turned out to be Kato, so this is not surprising. Um, but who knows? Maybe I'll finish a fucking show on the next episode. Who knows?